Today on Mana Biscuit, when it comes to preserving gaming's past, is it better to focus on collectability or posterity? Both approaches are highlighted by different news stories this week. We'll also be talking about some exciting game news, and I think there might have been a teaser trailer released for some sort of space movie. This week's Mana Biscuit starts now. Hello and welcome to this week's Mana Biscuit. I am RJ Velasquez, and with me again this week is my friend and co-host Jacob Gamble. How's it going, Jacob?
I'm doing well, man. And really, some sort of space movie.
Yeah,
We're
it's
talking
like
about
it's. I think there's like lasers and swords, and I mean,
Yes,
it seems like a fantasy movie set in space, if you ask me.
yeah,
But
something.
well, we'll get into that.
Well,
But we also have a lot to talk about this week in as far as classic games go. It's something we've mentioned on the show in the past, and anyone who knows us also knows that we're both really into the history of games. We grew up in the '90s and the 16-bit era, the birth of PlayStation, 3D gaming, yada yada yada. So, the history of games is an important topic to us, and there's a couple of stories this week that get into this question that seems to come up time and time again about how is gaming's history going to be preserved in the light of copyright concerns, in the light of old systems having proprietary technology, cartridges that will only work with these very old systems, and there's an actual physical limitation on how people can play these games when it comes to the disappearing consoles, the disappearing cartridges. How are these things going to be preserved? Well, there's a few answers to that, but I think the interesting question and what I want to focus on is the idea of collectability versus posterity. And of course, collectability is very important to geek culture. It's one of the driving forces of it. We were talking about it earlier about how there's just so much that tends to accumulate when you're passionate about different things, different trinkets, this sort of thing, that sort of thing. I'm guilty of it primarily with console games myself. My wall is just plastered with them for the most part, and GameStop is getting into that. There was a article on Wired that highlights a plan that GameStop is implementing in terms of taking in trade-ins, something they've always done, but taking in trade-ins for classic games. So I talked about it, and Jacob, well, you gave me an initial response there. So when I first brought it up to you, so I'll let you talk about it here.
my ranking in the money
Yeah.
collectible rant. Yeah, I am one that believes wholeheartedly in the posterity portion, the hand it down.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, one of my most recent fond memories was one of my roommates has triplets, or had triplets, I should say. That no longer one of my roommates, and
Mm-hmm.
we broke out the Super Nintendo,
Sure.
and these little 6 year olds got into Mario Kart, and
Yeah.
it was awesome. I mean,
Super Nintendo Mario Kart,
yep,
absolutely. Yeah.
Supermarket. It was a classic game, nostalgic for me, nostalgic for him, and brand new for them. And we got the opportunity. I got the opportunity to just see what it was like with it, just to see it from the outside looking in, as far as these kids discovering this game goes. And I'm all for it. I mean,
Okay.
breaking
Okay.
out the Nintendo, and what
Well,
is
right.
this, Dad? And
Yeah. Yeah. No.
they
And there's definitely that aspect to it. I've encountered with my own nieces and nephews. one of my nephews in particular that's just reminds me so much of RJ at his age, and the way he just like obsesses over these games. And of course, he has the modern gaming experience to draw from. But he would get into some classic games. I put Earthworm Jim on one of my older Nintendo DSs and let him play it, and it was just a blast to see him having fun with a 16-bit game like you were talking about there. But I put Earthworm Jim on my Nintendo DS. I paid for it, downloaded it, etc., and that preserved the experience. You talked about pulling out an actual classic Super Nintendo. Mm-hmm. So posterity is served in both ways, but collectability is when you actually have the system. And I do have, it's a little inaccessible at the moment, so I won't pull it out for the camera, but I do have a Super Nintendo sitting, within arm's reach. And I have on that same shelf down to my left, I have a Sega Saturn, and I also have my Xbox and PlayStation and PlayStation 2. So yes, I definitely appreciate the posterity, but I also appreciate the collectability. I can play, and in fact, all of the Super Nintendo games that I play, I don't often play them on my original Super Nintendo. I play them on my DS. I play them on the Wii. I play them, on, well, it's pretty much just the DS and no, the 3DS now. So I play them on my 3DS or I play them on my Wii. Going through and playing Chrono Trigger. Actually, Chrono Trigger now I'm playing on my PSP. So because there was the PlayStation version that was released, and it's part of the classic PlayStation games. So posterity is served by that, but there's still something to be said for collectability. And although posterity, like I said, is served by these downloadable versions, that's how I prefer to play them. I also really like having the Super Nintendo just to kind of look at and every once in a while plug in and turn on and pop in my Final Fantasy 3 cartridge and listen to the old MIDI theme, and it's fun. So in that regard, I think that yes, GameStop, nobody's going to defend GameStop as this champion of gamers. GameStop is the archetypical evil corporation, but I think the one thing that I don't like so much about GameStop stepping in here is it feels a little bit like the big corporation stepping in on the mom and pop, because where I got my Super Nintendo, actually it's kind of a little ironic that I'm talking about GameStop and them stepping into this when I got my Super Nintendo when I was working at GameStop. And some kid came in to trade it in, and I had to tell him, GameStop doesn't take that stuff anymore, because this was like 13 years ago, and they had literally just stopped a few weeks before. So I'm like, yeah, sorry, we don't take Super Nintendo anymore. But I looked at what he had, and I'm like, I'm going to take a break. And I went out and met him in the parking lot and paid him cash for everything he had.
I remember this.
Yeah, we were roommates at the time. So, yeah, yes. I came home with it all. And so, yeah, I mean, there's that. There's the, the collector-to-collector trading, eBay, that sort of thing. But there's also, your local gaming stores. Over where you are, there's... what's the name of that shop in Kalamazoo?
Fanfare?
Yeah, Fanfare does that. Yep.
Fanfare does that. What used to be Titan is now BC Comics does that. There are a handful of places, but it's not, for me, it's not so much the mom and pop thing. For me, it's it's another one of those cashing in on my childhood things that I'm still.
But if they're cashing in on your childhood, wouldn't you rather give the money to a local business than?
Of course.
Yeah, sure. So it's the same thing. It just feels gross because it's a big corporation.
Yes.
I think.
Yes.
So, yeah. So I'm with you on that. Yeah, I'm not here to say yay go GameStop, but will I peruse their listings, because just for some details on how this is going to happen, there's a few pilot stores, I think, in
New York.
Well, yeah, one was New York, and the other I think was some A state like Arkansas or Alabama. But yeah, just
Alabama.
Yeah. So Two pilot regions are going to take the trade-ins, but then they're going to ship them out and have them refurbished, and they're only going to be sold online.
Yep.
So yes, when this goes live, I will be taking a look, and if something speaks to me, I'll probably be clicking on it. You know,
I
hypocritical as
mean,
though that may be.
I'll lean it. I mean, ultimately being able to, and one of the things that did appeal to me,
Hmm.
what I did like was that they're going to take these things in, they're going to check them out, they're going to replace the
Yeah.
batteries, they're going to do the things that
Yes. Yes, that's huge.
allow this to be, yeah, the batteries in particular is
Hmm.
huge. But
Losing your Final Fantasy saves.
yep,
Been
losing your
there.
Final Fantasy saves,
Yeah.
not being able to save, on A Link to the Past, for
Yeah.
example, which
Hmm.
was one of my which was a huge deal for me
Yeah.
because I remember getting that Game Boy game and the battery dying,
Yeah.
and I would, or maybe that one was Link's Awakening, don't remember which, but I remember the battery dying on that, and the battery didn't last very long, and it, it it sat there. My Game Boy sat there, plugged in, turned on while I was sleeping, just to keep that game going. And
Yeah.
ultimately, it died, and I had to play it again. And then it died, and I had to do it again. And it was not happy. But no, I appreciate that they're going to bring them in and they're going to do the refurbished thing. Ultimately, that's not anything that these mom and pop stores do. Um, Simply probably because of the time that it would take and the opportunity to lose money on it is probably a huge deal for them. But
Well,
um,
I will say this much for them: it's going to get these classic games and the actual physical copies of them into more people's hands, so an entire generation can be exposed to blowing out the cartridge, and and
yes,
yeah, so kids will know. I know my nieces and nephews already know what that's about because as their uncle, I feel that it's important to teach them uh, the important things about their roots. So it's passing it on to a new generation. But there are some other things on this subject that were uh, interesting. I thought now the way the DMCA currently works, there is a restriction on reworking the code of games, even for preservation purposes. And why that's important is because we're coming up on a time where these multiplayer games that have, as part of their DRM, digital rights management, had to dial into central servers, are starting to pass into history. Games that came out in the early 2000s and the mid 2000s that were primarily online in nature, like Star Wars Galaxies, the MMO. Um, EverQuest is still plugging away, but they'll be in this boat eventually. It's inevitable. And these other MMOs that existed, from the late '90s, early 2000s, their servers are gone. So the only way anybody could play them is to actually hack the code of the game so it will work on a homebrew server. Now, the DMCA doesn't allow for this, but the Library of Congress, which manages the DMCA exceptions, every 3 years will hear cases presented for the for new exceptions to the DMCA. So, the Electronics Frontier Foundation, in an article covered by the Daily Dot, we read about the EFF filing for an exception so that these games could be hacked, so to speak, in order to be preserved. And what can I say at this point? I hope they're successful.
go
Yeah,
hard.
I mean, yeah, it's. I never played Star Wars Galaxies. I had a lot of friends that played it. I was into EverQuest. I moved from EverQuest to World of Warcraft, and 10 years later, I'm still in World of Warcraft, having dabbled in various other MMOs. But the people that played Galaxies were intensely passionate about it,
Mm-hmm.
and there is something that exists on this sort of, it's popular, but not quite popular enough to put any kind of legal effort into shutting it down. And the people that maintain it will swear that by the terms of service, they're within their rights to do what they do. It's called Project 1999. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. I've spent some time with it. It's EverQuest, which, as I mentioned, still exists, but it's on a customized server, a private server, that adheres as strictly as possible to the rules and constraints of the game as it existed in 1999, 2000, and basically through the first two expansions. And they're just next month going to be finally releasing the second expansion.
Rebellious.
Yep. So, but yeah, about a year ago, I fell into old habits. For like 2 straight months, I was on Project 1999, an embarrassing amount of time, and that's most of their user base on Project 1999 are nostalgia tourists like me. At any given time, they'll probably have 600 to 1,000 people on the server, and maybe 100 of those are like the true hardcore who have been there forever and are going to be there forever. But most people are just kind of passing through like I did, and it was a valuable experience. I guess. I mean, I did.
Did you have a monk that sat in a cave for hours on end?
Yeah, no, I didn't do any of that actually. I played a paladin, and well, this is we could deep dive into this, but paladins in classic EverQuest, while fun to play, were a detriment to the party because of the way that XP sharing worked in groups, and there were classes with XP penalties, and classes with XP penalties basically absorbed most of the group experience, and so leveling is always slow when you have an XP penalty, and when you're in a group with somebody with an XP penalty, even if your class isn't that slow at leveling, it's going to feel that slow because the way the XP is portioned out, it like brings it down to the lowest. Anyway, that's if you don't know what I'm talking about, then you're probably better off, and I probably shouldn't spend too much time trying to explain it. But yeah, so anyway, it was it's a fine example though of what we're talking about in terms of preserving for posterity classic online games. And so if you have any interest at all in classic EverQuest, Project 1999, Google it. It's pretty straightforward. Setup instructions. You do need to have.
Free?
It's free. Yeah. I mean, if they were charging for it, they'd probably be gone in a heartbeat. Now, you do need to own a very specific version of EverQuest, which you can pretty much only get on eBay right now, or other ways that people on the internet know about how to get things. It's not. I don't endorse that. They don't endorse that, but it's going to happen. But yeah, you do need a specific client, one that was released like 15 years ago, EverQuest Titanium, I believe it is. But anyway, so yeah, if the EFF their petition for this exception is successful, we might see a lot more of that. Granted, Project 1999 is a little bit more of a hinky area right now because EverQuest proper is still active, although a vastly different game 16 years later. But it's still active. But games that aren't active anymore, the doors have been shut on them. They could see new life in communities like this. And go ahead. Sorry.
Hey, let's talk about. Talk about having new life. As we're talking about this, you turned me. I had forgotten all about Archive.
Right.
And Archive ultimately was primarily text way back when. And you're like, yeah, they've got a software portion. And as I'm going through this,
archive.org,
games,
archive.org, the Internet Archive is what we're talking about. But yeah, they have all these arcade games preserved, and it's a little it's not exactly the most user friendly experience in the world, but it's
most
workable.
Certainly is not, but
it's workable. Yeah, you can get it working. You can even get it working with a controller if you want to put like a gamepad for your PC if you want to get into it. But at the core, the reason that I think posterity is And I love the collection aspect. We've already talked about that. But I think what posterity's most important role is that as we as a culture start to talk about games in more serious ways, as legitimate art, not to dive into the beat dead horse that's constantly beaten about our games are they not art. Let's just come out and say yes, they are. They're an important part
Yes.
of modern culture. They will be an important part of understanding our culture for future generations, and they will continue on in some form or another through future generations. So as we start to talk about that, imagine if you had to talk about modern literature without being able to talk about classic
Shakespeare.
literature. Yeah, Shakespeare, or even from the '60s, things like John Updike. Or imagine if you had to talk about impressionism and cubism and these different variants of art styles in the painting culture, but you didn't have access to Monet or Manet or Van Gogh or
Picasso.
Picasso. Yeah. So imagine trying to talk about art, and when you're talking about these things, history matters. You gotta understand the evolution, where things came from, and without a way to preserve classic games for posterity, then that conversation and that line of study and that line of inquiry is going to be severely damaged. And even though it's a pain in the butt to get some of these games working on MAME, if you're a grad student and you're writing a paper and you want to talk about some aspect of the evolution of games, then it's there for you. You can go back to these without having to spend ridiculous amounts of money or hours searching the secondary market and Craigslist and eBay. It's all right there on archive.org. And so more power to them. That's about all I can say about that.
I've gone through this and said periodically you'll catch me smiling here as I
Yeah.
reminisce about a specific game, but this is beautiful. I mean, this is Atari 2600 games, right on up
Mm-hmm.
to right
Yep.
on up to some of the stuff that I just never had the opportunity to play, and I'm looking forward
Yeah.
to
Well,
giving this a shot now.
when I was dabbling around in like learning different uh, uh, coding languages and playing with different development platforms, I've one of my go-tos is like just making a game. And so I decided one time that I wanted to make a game that was kind of like in the style of Gauntlet. And I'm like, boy, I don't really remember a whole lot about Gauntlet other than, Warrior needs food badly, and that there was just wave after wave of enemies, and you kind of progress through the dungeon. And then I'm like, wait a minute, I can go to archive.org and play Gauntlet. And so I did. And it helped a lot. And that's just what I'm talking about in terms of having the past to draw on to, for me, obviously, I'm not writing any grad thesis or grad student PhD thesis or anything, but
But
people are.
that doesn't make it
Yeah.
any less inspirational, and
Yeah, sure.
that's just it.
So, yeah, I mean, and for the people that are doing that, what I consider very important work, that's there for them as well. So, yeah, just a shout out. This is not news by any means. It's been there for a
Yeah.
while, but yeah, archive.org, their main project. It's fantastic. So, enough about the games of the dusty past, though. There was some gaming news that about upcoming games that interested us, and I know, Jacob, you are most excited about Killing Floor 2.
I am indeed. Killing you. Okay, so long story short, my work schedule sucks.
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity to beta test, to do the beta test in preparation for tomorrow's early access for Killing Floor 2, and was not able to play. So I was forced. I wasn't forced, mind you, but I gave it up willingly. What
Hmm.
I gave up my beta key, and as I received text after text after message saying just how great this game is, and we're talking we're talking about the buddy that I entrusted with
Right.
this
Yeah.
said
So our
literally 8 out of 10
yeah,
on this game,
nice. Yeah, a friend of
and
the
yeah,
show, Andrew Kolseth. Is
yep,
that how you say his last name? Okay.
yep.
Yeah. So he played it for us. He captured some footage, which were in the process of getting transferred, and we'll be getting it prepped for the YouTube channel. It's I'll be honest, it doesn't look like my style of game. I'm just the hyper violent and shooter are like two checks off my list that I'm like, yeah, I'll pass, but that's fine. I'm not judging. I know you really like it, and Andrew, yeah, I was talking about it. He was really excited to play it, and really grateful to him for playing it for us, so we can get some footage for it up on the channel. So if you're watching, Andrew, thanks a bunch, and
Thank you, bud.
we'll get your videos up on the channel shortly. So, but tell us a little bit about what the game actually is, Jacob.
Killing Floor is a co-op game concerning, I believe it's 4 people. It's been a while since I played the first Killing Floor.
Mm-hmm.
It's wow, has it been? It's been 7 or 8 years since I played the first one. Ultimately, there were it was a very British-oriented game. Like everybody had British accents, which I thought was kind of
Okay.
cool, and there were British insults like, Wayne Rooney is smarter than you, which was one of our
Okay.
classic taunts.
Whatever that means.
Wayne Rooney is a soccer player who is
uh,
considered who is considered the dumbest
I'm sorry, I
Brit
believe that would be a
ever.
football player, but
So yes, it's soccer, whatever. I am American, okay? It
but
is
he's not.
soccer.
So all right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
anyway, so yeah, very British in style and tone. But I mean,
Uh,
what are you doing?
you start off in
Apparently
an
you're on a
elevator.
floor and you're killing,
Yes, you
but
start off in an elevator, and you way to just absolutely trivialize that.
no, I'm just saying that's what I would expect coming into the game. But I
Yeah.
mean, this is your baby, man. Tell us about it. Tell
Okay,
us about it.
basically, you start off in an elevator, the doors open up, and there are zombies everywhere, and you have to make it from one end to the other.
Okay.
That's simple.
Okay.
Ultimately, various
But
types of zombies. Some of
and
them
it's
take
cooperative, and so
it's
I'm guessing like different classes.
class
Then
specific. Yep, you
okay,
have what we were talking. There's a new the commando class. There's a medic, a flamethrower.
okay.
Things like that, and every one of them has
So
their
party-based
specific.
shooters are yeah okay, popular and fun. I'm not a huge shooter guy, but if I'm playing, I I like the co-op. I like playing with friends. So and so it's co-op versus AI though, right? So kind of like a Left 4
Yes,
Dead type thing.
yes,
Although if I don't know the history. I'm assuming Killing Floor and Left 4 Dead were relatively contemporary. If it's like 7-8 years ago, but
yes.
so yeah, so cooperative, lots of zombies, different types of zombies, so probably some strategy elements in there combined with okay. Yeah, I can
Mhm.
see the appeal for that. And yeah, so we'll be excited to get the gameplay up on the YouTube channel and
And it
early
opens
access. Yes,
tomorrow.
early access on the 21st, which tomorrow for us, or if you happen to be in the Twitch stream right now, but today at the latest because this will be going up on YouTube tomorrow. So. Um, Okay, so yeah, Killing Floor 2. That's hitting tomorrow. We got some video for it. Some other just quick rundown of some announcements that stuck out to us. Star Ocean 5 was announced by Square Enix. Follow up to Star Ocean Till the End of Time was the last game, I believe. I could walk over and double check the title because I have it on my shelf over there. But it was the Xbox 360 Star Ocean, which I really enjoyed.
I did not get a chance to play that one. I haven't played
So
Star Ocean
what's the
since
last one you played?
I. It'd be what would it be?
Was this
Was it Sega or was it PlayStation?
well?
Uh,
There, I believe the Star Ocean 1 and Star Ocean 2 um, were originally Super Nintendo games, and they ported them to the PSP. So
Okay, maybe it
Yeah, I
was the
think
PSP then.
they ported one of them to the PlayStation as well, if I recall, but I could be mistaken on that. So, yeah. So you played the classic 16-bit sprite era Star Oceans, which yeah, I've played those as well. And for me, Star Ocean is that marriage of Final Fantasy and Star Trek, which is the reason I like it. Obviously, yes, no secret, I'm a Star Trek fan. And for me, Trek versus Wars is very real, and I come down on a particular side. Uh, but
Which is not the right side, but it's a side.
well, yeah, it's the dark side, I guess. I don't know.
Mm,
It's the whatever. That's not what we're talking about right now. the the reason I like it as that kind of marriage as well is it's interesting. Growing up in the '90s with most games in that era, most popular games coming from Japan on the consoles. That sort of that aspect of Japanese culture is part of our culture. The
mm,
'90s anime, the Sailor Moon was on Saturday morning cartoons alongside of everything else, and I like seeing that culture's take on our culture, I guess. So you see that kind of anime take on Star Trek, and it's pretty interesting. And there's lots of other ways to explore it, but that was always the core appeal. And then you get into the games themselves, and they're
and just
fun
amazing.
JRPGs. Yeah, so
Mm.
that's my bag, as what's his name, Austin Powers would say. But yeah, so we got a new one to look forward to. It is called Star Ocean Integrity and
And
Faithlessness.
faithlessness.
Well, that's typically JRPG kind of overwrought title, I think. But
Hmm.
we'll see how it goes. There's some screenshots up on GameSpot right now. Not GameStop, the evil corporation we were talking about earlier, but GameSpot, the gaming blog, and I'm sure other gaming blogs as well pick it up. But yeah, check it out if that's at all interesting to you. There's no release date yet, but it's a thing that is happening, and it interested us.
Hmm.
And
And
yeah,
what
go ahead.
also interested me was this week was the teaser for Death's Gambit, which
Right, that was on
ultimately is,
PC Gamer.
yep, those on PC Gamer Magazine. It's teasing me with a 2D a 2D side scroller with the learning curve of Dark Souls.
Right.
That is exciting to me.
Well, sure. Yeah, and the thing about Dark Souls that was really compelling is the sort of timing aspect and mastering the
Mhm.
timing, and that really lends itself well to a 2D side scroller when you see it in games like other Metroidvania style games as well. So a lot of potential here. The
Indeed.
screenshots, the trailer all look very cool, and I didn't notice a release date for that either.
No
Yeah,
release date listed
yeah.
as of
So,
yet.
but something we'll be keeping an eye on. Absolutely. And then
This one's yours.
the other thing I wanted to talk about. This came out in early access a while ago, but I did get a chance to play it. I streamed it a little bit on Friday night, and a friend of mine dropped by, and we had a good old time. But the game Darkest Dungeon, and it's speaking of punishingly difficult games, it's definitely in that vein, but it's not. It's not the timing, the twitch skill that can kind of come into play with Dark Souls. It's far more planning, strategy, resource management, and all of that's typical for a dungeon crawler, but the specific resources that you're managing in this game are unique. You have your typical stuff in terms of gold and inventory and stats that you roll, and abilities, attacks, and positional management, tactical management, that sort of thing. But there's an interesting flavor element as well, which will end up having gameplay consequences, and that is your party's mental health. So it's something that seems so obvious when you think about it. Like, what kind of impact would it really have on the human mind to dive into these dungeons and just fight monster after monster after monster. I mean, who is going to encounter that and stay sane? And your guys don't.
No.
They have a limited resource of sanity, so to speak, and when that breaks, status effects, which some are very impactful in terms of gameplay, others are more flavor. Like they will break and they will suddenly become selfish. So they're talking about taking all the loot and they're stealing things. They will become depressed, so they will just constantly ramble about how hopeless your quest is. Or, and what I think really adds the most to this, they will break and rise to the occasion. And so you get like heroic status breaks. Like, that's it, they snap, but this is what they're going to do. And so they get massive stat buffs. And so you get these moments where you're like at the end of your rope, you're really about to lose your entire party in this dank dungeon, and somebody just died, and of course death is permanent. There's no little fancy res scroll to get them back or anything. When when one of your party's dead, they're dead. That's it, you get a new one. So yeah, a couple people have died, and things are not going well, and your last guy's sanity breaks, and you're like, oh, it's over, but it breaks and he becomes a hero and he finishes the fight. And it was just, yeah, that happened once. It was just an amazing feeling, a lot of fun. It was a blast to stream. I'll be streaming it some more in the near future, and yeah, we'll be we'll be having some fun there. So I wanted to talk about that. And then there was I think that was it for this week, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't
Nothing
think
else to talk
that.
about.
Wow.
I think we're ready to close the show.
No, no. Why do you do this? No, that's like there's that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So Star Wars
Let's talk
Force
about Star
Awakens.
Wars.
Yep. Okay. So
Yes.
yeah, I posted the trailer on our Mana Biscuit Facebook page with the comment that it was pretty all right.
Yep.
It was and that
Just
it looked
simply
like
okay.
it looked like it'll be a cool action movie. So I'll probably watch it.
It's,
All right, all right,
keep
all
going.
right, all right.
Keep
No.
feeding me
All
until I
right.
finally break, homie. Just do it. Let's see what happens.
All right.
No,
Well, okay.
this is
So
the
what's
great. This is
all right?
so awesome. Are you
All right.
serious? You can't
I am
even.
serious, but this is your show now. I
Oh goodness, yes. This is a Star Wars. I okay. 30 seconds twice over has just left me speechless. There is so much that, and because of what Disney's doing as far as what is and isn't canon, I'm still a little bit confused on who is what and what is who. But my this whole thing opens with a star destroyer sitting there stuck
that
in the
was cool.
sand, and
Yeah, it was
yeah,
very evocative. I did like that imagery. I'll
yeah,
give you that.
beautiful. And I'm like, this is and right next to it, the little X-wing fighter. Obviously, something went down right above this planet, and
Mm-hmm.
which I'm assuming is um, not Hoth, Tatooine.
Tatooine. Yeah.
Yes, they do. Which I
Yeah,
assume is
that's why I figured
Tatooine,
it
but
was like all deserty.
yep. And we'll see where they go with that. But um, we get the first look at Revan, which is an exciting villain who I know very, very little about, to be honest with you, because I'm just not I'm not. You've got those people that can go through and list all of the Darths and things like that. I'm not one of them.
Right.
So I can't. But if you get me into a conversation with one of those people, I can keep pace. I just can't remember their names off the top of my head. But Revan is a great villain as far as the books go. What I remember of it. So I'm looking forward to that. The new look in the stormtroopers. I think, I mean, it's
What
an
was
updated
different
look.
about them?
The helmet itself, pretty much.
Okay.
The way that
They looked like stormtroopers to me, I guess, but
yeah, it's just an updated take on an
okay.
old helmet. which I kind of okay. I mean, it's not anything that's going to make or break the story. What I'm curious on, and I don't know if this is in the mythos or I don't know where in mythos this is, but ultimately the stormtroopers. I mean, the stormtrooper whose helmet gets pulled off. I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head, but obviously. He at some point in time breaks and becomes part of the story, but they're no longer the clones. They're something
Right.
else.
Okay. Yeah. So
Which
that's yeah. So,
so I'm curious as to how they're
that's
gonna
true.
make that
Yeah.
happen.
I didn't think about
Um,
that.
yep,
Obviously. But yeah, yeah, because I mean, I've seen the movies too. So the stormtroopers previously were what clones of Django, and
yep.
now some dude pulls off a stormtrooper helmet. But wasn't like Han disguised as a stormtrooper or something in one of those movies? So maybe it's just a guy trying to pass as a stormtrooper. Who can say?
It very well could be, but
Who can say?
and we'll see.
That's the fun of teasers. Lots of
Yeah,
speculation.
there's
Yeah.
lots of speculation, and that's all this is going to be for quite some time. But I'll tell
Yeah,
you
well,
what.
you know, Christmas of next year, 2016
Yep,
Christmas. Yeah, so we've got a solid 20, well, 18 months. Yeah, solid
yep.
18 months.
And we'll have Rogue One, which by the way has its had its teaser trailer out this month as well.
Rogue
Or
One,
this yes, Rogue One's
is that a
teaser
TV
trailer came out
TV
this week.
show?
No, that is the Star Wars standalone movie.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that was a thing. Uh,
You didn't know that was a thing, really? Really? I did.
well, this who are you talking to?
Yeah, you're talking. That's
I
right.
know. Yeah. So Rogue One is a standalone, and that's coming out before the
Yes,
J.J. Abrams movie.
yes.
Okay.
Who is directing that one? I do not know. Actually, I could look that up real quick, but we're running. We're about to
Yeah.
wrap this up. So,
Okay. Well, I mean, if yeah, so lots of stuff to talk about with the trailer. If you're into that sort of thing, which I know, I have no illusions that I am in the minority when it comes to enthusing about Star Wars. I mean, it's all right. I I don't get ridiculously excited about it. I don't get the nerd chills that that was like my entire Twitter feed when the trailer released was like hashtag nerd chills. Maybe a little for the Star Destroyer because that was a really cool shot, but and also just because Harrison Ford. But beyond that, I don't know enough. I'll watch the movie when it comes out, and thanks to Jacob, we'll continue to cover it as more information comes out about it. So, all right. Well, I guess that's about it for what we had to talk about this week. Upcoming this throughout the week, we'll see how it goes with the Killing Floor 2 footage. It's gonna be a little bit, I think, to get it set up and rendered for YouTube because you said we're getting it as raw, but we'll see how that goes. I'm also still working on cutting up some Pillars of Eternity footage, and I have some footage from the Darkest Dungeon stream I mentioned. We'll get that cut up and put up on YouTube. At least some of that will be throughout the week here before we have our next show. I'll also probably this Friday, yeah, probably this Friday, I'm going to stream some more Darkest Dungeons, so stop on by twitch.tv/Mana Biscuit TV. Wait, I get them confused all the time. We're twitch.tv/Mana Biscuit, facebook.com/Mana Biscuit TV, and at Mana Biscuit TV on Twitter. And we are Mana Biscuit on YouTube. So, all right.
also,
Yeah.
real quick, I just got. I was going through upcoming as we were just to make sure that I didn't have anything that I had forgotten, and I missed one that's huge. Trine 3, Artifacts of Power.
Mm-hmm.
Early access is tomorrow as well.
Okay. Okay. So,
So
yeah.
we've got a new
Did
co-op that we'll have to look into.
right as we played Trine 2, and I was that was in the show that never happened.
Was it really?
Yeah, I think that was in
Oh.
the show that never happened. So maybe next week we'll dedicate some time to Trine 2, and because it was a lot of fun to play. It's a gorgeous game, and yeah, everything I've seen on Trine 3 looks like it's going to live up to that so far.
Hmm.
So um, all right, yeah. So good catch. Definitely, the Trine series are a blast, gorgeous, and we love them. So, all right.
Indeed.
Well, I think that's it for this week's Mana Biscuit. I want to thank you all for watching. We really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the show, please visit us on Facebook.com/ManaBiscuitTV and follow us on Twitter at ManaBiscuitTV. Remember to like the video and subscribe on YouTube, and you can follow us for live streams on Twitch.tv/ManaBiscuit. Your support really means a lot to us. So thank you. And for Jacob Gamble, I'm RJ Velosky, and say bye bye, Jacob.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.